say, I'm just imagining China trying to build this infrastructure in space, and I'm thinking about all their problems with tofu-dreg constructions. Like, they can't build a skyscraper without it collapsing, and they're going to build moon colonies?
Absolutely. This is the military. The space program is controlled entirely by the People's Liberation Army, and as long as space, the moon, and beyond are identified as the high ground that must be conquered, the PLA will receive the resources to make this happen, to bring home this prize to the Chinese Communist Party leadership. They may not be able to build skyscrapers, bridges that work, but they can build rockets. They've built thousands of them to attack Taiwan. They've certainly perfected the technology to make very large liquid fueled rockets adequate to lift the payloads necessary to put people on the moon and to transport the infrastructure to support life on the moon, to support exploration, mining, and the such. And all of this will only improve as we go forward. Russia, the United States, and China are all working on the next generation of space propulsion, which today is largely nuclear propulsion. But something will come along that's better rather quickly, probably in the next decade, and something even better in the decade after that. So the limits of our imagination, which for me at my age was Star Trek and the such. That could actually happen. At this point, the Chinese Communist Party will be there, provided we survive with enough strength as well to continue in the same quest.
Well, so you made an interesting point that for China to dominate space, it will have to prevent other countries from having access to space, like the United States, India, maybe even Russia. How would China prevent other countries from developing their space programs?
Well, let's just look at what they're doing. In September of 2022, one of the few remaining Chinese academic journals that you can still access online, that you don't have to go through CNKI, which is now denied, or be a resident of China in order to access. The Journal of Deep Space Exploration published an article that was essentially about how and why China should put radar on the moon, and the reasons why were to monitor cislunar space, but also to monitor the Lagrangian points. If this is an essential concept of space geostrategy. The Lagrangian point, and I think there's like 5 of them in our little Earth Moon system. These are points of equal gravitational pull that sort of like if you go there, you can sort of like tread water in space, and because of that property, it is easier to put a satellite or a manned space station or an unmanned or manned military space station to monitor and then fire weapons to control access to the Earth Moon system. So not only do we see articles about putting radar on the moon, we also see articles about how China should be putting its own constellation of observation, navigation, and communication satellites around the moon so that it can control really access to the moon for other countries that want to buy into it. It's sort of like buying into Huawei or ZTE for the moon. It's probably a lot cheaper than Elon Musk's future Starlink for the moon, if we suppose that happens. And the countries that are joining the Chinese Moon Coalition will find this very attractive. And yes, the United States and China are building political, scientific, technical coalitions, competing coalitions to go forward on the moon. The United States has its Artemis Accords coalition of about, I think now, up to 28 countries. And China, just in the last couple of weeks, I think has signed on its fourth member. Thailand, and before that, I believe South Africa, and then Venezuela, Russia, and China. These are coalition. The Chinese coalition will largely be paid for by China. Venezuela, can Venezuela afford to put astronauts on the moon? But the dictator there, Maduro, during his mid August visit to China, announced that China was going to put a Venezuelan on the moon. Was going to train a Venezuelan, put that person on the moon. This is fantastical stuff, yes, but it is a brutal illustration of the resources that China is willing to expend to achieve moon dominance on the way to achieving cislunar space dominance, low Earth orbit dominance, and Earth dominance.
How much of a priority is this for the PLA? Because as you mentioned, this is a lot of resources.
It's a very high priority.
Like, how would you rank it in terms of like?
Because they need to get Taiwan first.
Well, yes, they need to get Taiwan first, and I'll explain why that's important. But the priority here, I mean, they're sort of probably the same. And yes, the resources dedicated to moon control is not yet as high as Taiwan control, displacing the United States, and achieving global hegemony. But the amount of after Taiwan is taken and can be exploited, then the resources that will be devoted to moon control and beyond will grow very fast. The war against Taiwan is important because controlling the first island chain is essential for many things, to include securing the Wenchang Satellite Launch Center, the main satellite launch projection center for the PLA to the moon and beyond. Wenchang is on Hainan Island. And because of its much lower latitude, it's easier to put payloads into space. And that makes it essential. It's the only space launch center that is being built to support launches to the moon and beyond. They'll probably build multiple centers on Wenchang. Wenchang is currently being expanded to include a launch site for so-called private Chinese space launch companies. They're not private. Everything is controlled by the PLA. But securing Wenchang requires control of Taiwan. Control of Taiwan is necessary to secure the South China Sea and also to secure Hainan Island. Controlling Taiwan is necessary to then go after the Ryukyu Islands, take them from Japan so that those islands don't become the threat that they are, or remain the threat that they are, to Chinese dominance in East Asia, the South China Sea, and then the Indian Ocean and Africa. And yes, then the Atlantic Ocean, and then Latin America. But they're also going to Latin America through the South Pacific. So it's mutually supporting here. But control of low Earth orbit is absolutely essential into achieving this whole plan. And securing low Earth orbit requires securing medium Earth orbit, cislunar space, and then control of the moon.
So there's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing when it comes to taking over Taiwan, though, right? Because like in a PLA invasion of Taiwan, one of the factors that's sort of newish in the scope of big wars is control of space, right? Which is the U.S. has its navigational satellites and military communication satellites, and China has their own versions of those things also in space. And that's, I imagine, going to be a much bigger factor during the actual process of the PLA's attempt to take over Taiwan, right?
Any war now would be a space war in some way.
Yeah. And it's also very easy to basically take out low Earth orbit. You blow up, 20, 40 enemy satellites. You'll create so much debris that low Earth orbit will essentially be useless to everybody, which is why going deeper into space makes increasing strategic sense for all of the spacefaring powers.
Right, but if China blows up, say 40 satellites in low Earth orbit, creating a massive debris field of these small particles traveling at 10,000 miles an hour through space, doesn't that make it hard for China to then launch new things into space without having to go through this dangerous debris field?
Well, you could harden a space launch vehicle, so make the so that the you can steer your way through thin points in the debris field. The rocket can be hardened so that it can withstand some degree of damage. I mean, if the rocket is, let's say, going as fast as the debris, then it's not striking the rocket in a highly damaging way, and you can get above it and beyond. It's a solvable problem if your intention is to take out low Earth orbit for everybody.